Assalamu alaikum, how are you guys doing? We're going to take a break, and I want to people know I've been talking about milk, real milk versus pasteurized milk, and I have nutritionists going on almost 40 years who's Jim Marlowe, very conversant in this area. How you doing, Mr. Jim?
I'm doing very well, Eddie. Good to see you again.
Real milk.
Yes, real milk.
You know,
real milk from healthy animals.
You know, I was amazed, according to the FDA, the number one allergenic food is milk. But how can this be? We're not talking about real milk, though. This has to be that.
No, it's interesting that you bring that up. You know, when I was at Dr. Mercola's clinic, beginning in 2002, I walked into Dr. Mercola's office one day and I said, you know, Joe, I just made a connection for some raw dairy products from some healthy animals. I've been consuming it myself and it feels absolutely wonderful for me. And he wanted to try some for himself, and everybody who worked at the Optimal Wellness Center at that time, including all the people on my nutrition team, they all wanted to try it too. We all tried it ourselves. We all enjoyed it. We all felt good with it, even though a number of us had problems with pasteurized dairy products. We had no problems at all with raw dairy products from healthy animals. So Dr. Mercola supported that we start promoting raw dairy products from healthy animals to our patients, and it was a wonderful new dimension of nutrition that we were including in our recommendations to our patients. Dairy is not right for everybody. Even raw dairy from healthy animals is not a food that is going to be right or health promoting for everybody. But I would say about 90% of the people that we had worked with who had some type of problem with pasteurized dairy, they were either lactose intolerant with pasteurized dairy, or they had allergies to pasteurized dairy. When someone has a food allergy, it's because their body's immune system is responding to the milk, to the proteins in the food. About 90% of our patients who had some type of problem with pasteurized dairy, they had no problem at all with raw dairy. They were able to digest it. It felt good to them. It was a nourishing food for them. There were about 10% of people who had problems with pasteurized dairy, and they also had some problems with the raw dairy. It wasn't right for everybody. But once we had resources of raw dairy to refer our patients to, it helped us in the work we were doing in teaching people how to use food like their medicine to strengthen themselves where they were weak, to balance themselves where they were out of balance. And it was a very valuable resource of health building nutrition for many of our patients.
So the reason the FDA would have milk as the number one allergenic food, because the pasteurized, homogenized, that's fake food, and your body's having a negative reaction to it. Is that right?
Yes. Pasteurized dairy can be much more difficult for the body to properly digest. When you pasteurize dairy, the first thing you destroy is all the natural enzyme activity in the milk. So, you know, milk has lactose, which is the milk sugar, but it also, in a raw state, has active lactase enzyme. Lactase enzyme is the enzyme your body can use to digest the lactose. But when you pasteurize, that is, equate pasteurization in this case with heat damaging. When you heat damage the milk, you totally destroy the activity of the lactase enzyme. So now there's nothing in the milk to support your digestion of the lactose. Also, when you pasteurize the milk, you kill all the other enzymes that are in the milk. You know, the lipases, which are fat digesting enzymes, and the proteases, which are protein digesting enzymes. So there's no more active enzyme activity in the milk after it's pasteurized. So now your body has to do all the digestive work on its own, because there's no enzymes that are left. There are active enzymes in raw milk, but there's none in the pasteurized heat damaged milk. So also another thing that you do when you pasteurize the milk is that you do kill all of the native flora of friendly bacteria that's in the milk in a raw state when it's from healthy animals. Yes, there is bacteria in the milk, but you know, there's bacteria everywhere. There's bacteria in us, there's bacteria on us, there's bacteria on the surface of all raw foods, raw plant foods, as well as as raw animal foods. But when the milk is from healthy animals, the bacteria that's in the milk, the native flora, friendly bacteria that's in the milk, is very similar to the same type of bacteria that are used to make yogurt and kefir. Those bacterial cultures that are used to turn milk into yogurt, used to turn milk into kefir, that's naturally found in the milk to a very significant extent. A native flora of friendly bacteria that is in there that can be very good for our intestinal health. And that's also wiped out by pasteurization. So why was pasteurization originally done? Well, pasteurization was originally done because of industrialization of the dairy industry, and as they had more and more cows on the dairy farm, not allowed to live the ideal healthy life for a cow, grazing on an open range, grazing on grass, out in the sunshine and the fresh air. When the dairy industry, when their individual locations got bigger and bigger and bigger, the animals' health was suffering, and so the quality of the milk was reduced. And so what pasteurization really did was, like when Louis Pasteur first introduced pasteurization to the world, he basically introduced it to winemakers in France. I think it was in the 1870s. He showed the winemakers how they could still profit from a bad crop of grapes that were used to make wine. Then the wine would ferment, over ferment, and turn into vinegar. And he showed them that, well, if you make the wine and then you heat it, that stops further fermentation. And so the truth about what Louis Pasteur developed was he showed how you could actually still produce poor quality wine but make it acceptable, and this, of course, the winemakers were all for this. So he basically showed an industry how they could profit from a poor quality product, keep it from going bad. The same thing can be said of the dairy industry early in the 20th century, when the quality of the milk was declining. When pasteurization was introduced, basically that was a method that was used.
The early 19th.
That was in the early 20th century.
Okay.
But when pasteurization was introduced, it was basically, the dairy industry was basically doing the same thing. They were using a method to make poor quality milk, keeping it from going bad, and basically still profiting from poor quality milk from less than truly healthy animals. Mm-hmm. When you pasteurize it, that would wipe out any of the less than friendly bacteria that was in the milk, because the animals were truly not healthy because of the increasingly crowded conditions that they were living in. And of course, what any animal is eating, including human beings, it's only a matter of time before what we are eating is going to affect our health. The quality of what we're eating is going to affect our quality of our health sooner or
just
later.
one more point before we cut out on this episode of Taking a Break with Jim Marlowe. We're talking about pasteurized milk, which you find in the stores, homogenized versus real milk, the way the Creator intended for us to drink. People feel like I was skeptical in the beginning. I was like worried, is this stuff going to make me sick? Is there anything to fear now? Someone says if you don't pasteurize it, you can really get sick potentially. What do you say about that?
Well, raw dairy products are legally sold at the retail level in 10 states in the United States, California, Connecticut, South Carolina, 7 other states. You can find out all the other states and the status of raw dairy products in your state by going to realmilk.com, realmilk.com. And so if raw dairy products were truly potentially dangerous, I mean, why are they legal in 10 states? And in these 10 states where consumers are allowed to choose for themselves whether they want to buy raw dairy products that typically come from much healthier animals than the pasteurized dairy products that usually come from less than truly healthy animals, people are allowed to choose the raw dairy products or the pasteurized heat damaged dairy products. But in Illinois, where we live, we're not allowed to make that choice. And that has nothing to do with public health, although that's the propaganda about it. That's an example of the influence that the pasteurized dairy industry has had on our legislature and the lawmakers who basically develop these regulations. And if you were working in the pasteurized dairy industry, wouldn't you want to get rid of your competition? So that you could sell more of your product and make more profit? Well, that's what has happened in many states around the country. Is the lobbying efforts of the pasteurized dairy industry they've gotten lawmakers in states to enact a legislation or regulations that basically make it either at the very least difficult, or make it illegal for raw dairy products to be sold at the retail level in competition with the pasteurized dairy products. But again, if raw dairy products were inherently dangerous, why would they be sold in 10 states? And in these 10 states where raw dairy is legal, people are not getting sick from consuming raw dairy. There's no problems. It's just that the propaganda, the propaganda based on ignorance and a very biased opinion about against raw dairy products. The propaganda is that dairy products are potentially dangerous, and it's silly to want to seek this out. People who say that, they don't know what they're talking about. Raw dairy products from healthy animals can be a very valuable health building food for many people. Again, not everybody. There's no food that is universally beneficial to everybody other than breast milk from a healthy, well-nourished mother. But again, that's even an individual experience. But it's possible to have an allergy, an intolerance, or a sensitivity to any given food. And I think the reason that the FDA lists dairy as the #1 most common food allergy, if they do that, it's because it's been changed. It's because of the quality of the dairy that most people are consuming.
It's been made to. Can we put it in the classification of fake food now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. There are some organic dairy products that do have nutritional value for people. Some organic yogurts, kefirs, butter, cottage cheese, some other dairy, some certain cheeses that I've seen have value for people. But as far as the kind of the conventional mainstream non-organic milks and yogurts and kefirs or cheeses and all that type of stuff, I see those foods as often being trouble-making foods for people rather than health supporting foods. So, food quality is a fundamental issue that we really need to be persistently faithful to, be attentive to, and then faithful to buying, seeking out and buying the best quality food that God and nature have to offer us.
There you have it. The difference between pasteurized, homogenized. FDA has put it as one of the leading allergenic foods. Your body's having a negative reaction to it, but that's the fake food, not the real food. It's benefited me. Hopefully it'll benefit you. Jim gives it a thumbs up for the real food, real milk, and they can
from healthy, humanely raised animals. I strongly recommend that you seek out some raw dairy from a farmer in your area, or from a raw dairy based food co-op in your area, or if you're in California, Connecticut, South Carolina, or one of the other states where raw dairy is legal. I think raw dairy is more likely to be supportive of good health for you than pasteurized, heat damaged, and homogenized dairy products.
And this is the way the Creator has intended for us, for all of humanity. We'll see you next time. Until then, peace be with you. Subscribe if you haven't already.